After we introduce how to define a class, now we need to make our class more secure. So this one we'll talk about very important is data field encapsulation. We need to make data field private to protect data and make the class easy to maintain. So what means we need to make our data field private? Because here we see before, when we have our circle class, did you remember actually our radius can be updated using the c1.radius to change? However, this one actually is quite dangerous because all the data field is belong to the object. Sometimes we may not allow the data field can just be accessed by the object reference and being updated that. So that's why here before is because we don't have any accessibility, we make the change on the radius. But now we need to do the data field encapsulation. That's mean here actually that's make our all the data field and our method we have the either public or private access. Public, you all see the keyword before because we always make our class public. So that's why we can create object on that. But we can allow user to create the object, but we don't allow user to modify the data. So then we just add negative sign. So in the UML diagram, if each attribute or method, we add negative sign, that means private. Then on the other hand, if all the methods have the positive sign, that means they are public. So before in the UML diagram, you may not have the public or private. But from now on, from your assignment 4, then you will see I have all the data field or method either being private or public. So in this way, we have the data field encapsulation. So we make the data field is private, so they cannot be modified directly using the object reference variable. So actually we have the good reason for that, because we don't want them can be updated. Otherwise, if we don't do that, your class actually become very difficult to maintain because they always can be accessed and updated. So sometimes to prevent direct modification of the data field, we can declare our data field is private using the private modifier, or we can say the private keyword. So the private data cannot be accessed by an object from outside the class. If you want to make a private data field can be accessed, you have two different ways. If you just want this private data can be read, we provide a get method. You can return the value. So enable a private data field can be updated, then that means can be overwrite. You use the set method. But that's all up to you. You are the programmer. You decide what you want to do. So usually the get method we call getter function. The set method we say setter or mutator. So usually for the get method, we have the following signature. We have the return type is the data field type. So then we just using the get and the property name. For example, get radius. So then you have the set method. So then you have the void method. Then you just set the property name. For example, set radius. So then you have your new value with the same data type as the property name. So then of course, usually we make them public because we want they can be accessed by outside. So that's why here after we add the data field encapsulation concept, then you can see our circle UML diagram being changed again. So again, negative sign means private. public sign mean public, underline mean static, right? So that's why here the same thing. We provide you two different source file you can run from the IDE. Because we have all our circle class defined in the same module, so to avoid the confusion, we need to add the class as different class name. So now you will see the new class name is the class with private data field. So the difference from before is we make our radius at private. Then we make our static number of object is private. So the same thing in your constructor function. Default constructor, we set radius is 1. So then every time if one object being created, that means your constructor function being invoked. So then we increment by 1. Then right, we have getter function. Okay, so the same thing here, don't forget our getter function, we want to make them public. Okay, so my source file didn't add public, please add a public. So then your setter function is public. And also the same thing, actually your constructor function, you can make that public as well. Actually, that's a little different from C++. In Java, every method, if you have their accessibility, every method and every data attribute, you need to make the public or private keyword on that. Okay, so the same thing here. Then you have your get function, setter function, and your static function. Okay, so let's get used to that. We always give them public or private keyword. So right, in C++, we have private, public keyword, so you may understand that. But also here you see before, if we didn't give them any public or private, in Java also we have the default keyword. So the default keyword, the accessibility is between public and private. So I will talk about more detail next week. But here you just know about public and private. So then I think you have one more question maybe came from here. Okay, in case you didn't learn this one before. So when we have setter function, our purpose is we want to validate the new data. So that's why only the new radius is greater or equal to 0. Then we update the data. Otherwise, we set the radius equal to 0. So if you didn't learn this before, this one question mark and colon, we call that the conditional operator. So this one actually is a short if-else statement. So before your question mark is your condition. If this condition true, I'm using the next argument. If this condition is false, I'm using the last argument. So that's why if the new radius greater or equal to 0 is true, so then the new radius will be assigned to our host radius. Otherwise, we assign 0. So good, so after we have this new class we call circle with private data field. So then of course let's test this program. So we have this program is we test circle with private data field. Okay, so then you see we can run the program. So when you run the program, you will see this one actually we didn't have any. Just run the result to show you. On this one thing is you can see when we create my circle, anytime if we want to change the value, I'm using the set radius. Okay, so when I want to get data, we're using the get radius. So that's why your result run fine. But this one you can try is, since we already make our circle with a private data field, right? So for example, if I want to make my circle, or like we say, we want to increase circle radius is 20%. So then I just code. So you can see here, if I make my circle dot radius is 120, I just direct access using the object reference. So then I have arrow. You see the arrow is what? You can click on that. They will give you the error message. So they show you. Why they don't have error message? Okay, yeah. So then what they say is not visible. Because why it's not visible? Because they are private. So that's why you can see here, if we make that private, actually we cannot direct access the private data through the object reference. So you can test on that. So now we comment it out. So that's our new circle class with the private data field. Before we finish this video, let's continue to talk about this keyword. So this keyword refers to the object itself. It can also be inside a constructor to invoke to another constructor with the same name. So then you can see here when we have the radius, right? So then when you do the get area, so when you call the get area before we do radius times pi, you also can change become this dot radius, this dot radius. So this actually just means this refers to the host object. So you may feel weird why I need to use the radius of this. So in this case, actually they have no difference. But sometimes, a lot of time we do that is we have the this keyword when we're using for the setter function. So for example, here, let me show you the setter function. We're using the earlier our example for the private data field. You can see here, right? You see set radius. Okay, so this one actually is the new radius because we're using the new radius variable name different from our radius. But here, if I make this one, you see, because that's radius. So if I make this set radius, the variable name is radius, they are duplicate with this radius in the host object. So in order to distinguish the variable parameter radius and the host object radius parameter, yeah, so here actually I still can using the radius. But when I'm using the radius, this radius refer to this radius. And also here, the radius, this one, actually they all refer to this one. But I don't want to have the new value assigned to itself again, right? So this one actually I need to using to update my host object radius. So that's why this one, this keyword can help us if we have the same variable name conflict with our data field variable name. So then here we're using this keyword to refer to the host object radius, so we don't have the confusion. So that's usually we use this keyword. So you can try by yourself to update on the private data field example. Other than that, also this keyword, a lot of time we will refer to the host object. So this one we're using for the instance variable. So this keyword can use to refer to the class hidden data field. So this refer to the host object, and we can use this to refer to the instance variable. But sometimes if you have your static variable k, be careful. If you want to access k, you cannot using this k. For any static variable, be sure we're always using the class name dot the instance on the static variable name. This keyword can only associate with the instance variable name. For the static variable name, please using the class name. So then the last example for this keyword, they also can using for the constructor function. For example, our constructor function for default constructor, we can call the path parameter is 1.